Battle of Waterloo. The Battle of Waterloo was fought on Sunday, 18th of June, 1815, near Waterloo in the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, now in Belgium. A French army under the command of Napoleon was defeated by two of the armies of the 7th Coalition. One was a British-led coalition consisting of units from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Hanover, Brunswick, and Nassau, under the command of the Duke of Wellington. The other was a larger Prussian army under the command of Field Marshal von Blücher. The battle marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Quatre Bras, Genappe, Belgium. Crossing the frontier near Charleroi before dawn on 15th of June, the French rapidly overran coalition outposts, securing Napoleon's central position between Wellington's and Blücher's armies. He hoped this would prevent them from combining, and he would be able to destroy first the Prussians' army, then Wellington's. Ney's orders were to secure the crossroads of Quatre Bras, so that he could later swing east and reinforce Napoleon if necessary. Ney found the crossroads of Quatre Bras lightly held by the Prince of Orange, who repelled Ney's initial attacks but was gradually driven back by overwhelming numbers of French troops. Meanwhile, on 16 June, Napoleon attacked and defeated Blücher's Prussians at the Battle of Ligny, using part of the reserve and the right wing of his army. The Prussian center gave way under heavy French assaults, but the flanks held their ground. The Prussian retreat from Ligny went uninterrupted and seemingly unnoticed by the French. With the Prussian retreat from Ligny, Wellington's position at Quatre Bras was untenable. The next day he withdrew northwards to a defensive position he had reconnoitered the previous year, the low ridge of Mont Saint-Jean, south of the village of Waterloo and the Saunian forest. Before leaving Ligny, Napoleon had ordered Grouchy, who commanded the right wing, to follow up the retreating Prussians with 33,000 men. A late start, uncertainty about the direction the Prussians had taken, and the vagueness of the orders given to him meant that Grouchy was too late to prevent the Prussian army from reaching Wavre, from where it could march to support Wellington. Wee Hours Monument. Gordon, 1815 battle. Wellington rose at around 02 Sir or 03 Sarch on 18th of June and wrote letters until dawn. He had earlier written to Blücher confirming that he would give battle at Mont Saint-Jean if Blücher could provide him with at least one corps. Otherwise, he would retreat towards Brussels. At a late-night council, Blücher's chief of staff, August Neidhart von Gneisenau, had been distrustful of Wellington's strategy, but Blücher persuaded him that they should march to join Wellington's army. In the morning, Wellington duly received a reply from Blücher, promising to support him with 3 corps. Wellington watches troop deployments, Monument Gordon, 1815 battle. From 06 R, Wellington was in the field supervising the deployment of his forces. Napoleon's breakfast Chaussée de Bruxelles 66, Vieux Napoleon breakfasted off silver plate at Le Caillou, the house where he had spent the night. When Soult suggested that Grouchy should be recalled to join the main force, Napoleon said, "Just because you have all been beaten by Wellington, you think he's a good general. I tell you, Wellington is a bad general. The English are bad troops, and this affair is nothing more than eating breakfast." Napoleon's seemingly dismissive remark may have been strategic, given his maxim, "In war, morale is everything." He had acted similarly in the past, and on the morning of the Battle of Waterloo, may have been responding to the pessimism and objections of his chief of staff and senior generals. Prussians at Wavre, the Prussian IV Corps under Bülow was designated to lead the march to Waterloo, as it was in the best shape, not having been involved in the Battle of Ligny. Although they had not taken casualties, IV Corps had been marching for 2 days, covering the retreat of the 3 other corps of the Prussian army from the battlefield of Ligny. They had been posted farthest away from the battlefield, and progress was very slow. The roads were in poor condition after the night's heavy rain, and Bülow's men had to pass through the congested streets of Wavre and move 88 artillery pieces. Matters were not helped when a fire broke out in Wavre, blocking several streets along Bülow's intended route. As a result, the last part of the corps left at Tenquois, 6 hours after the leading elements had moved out towards Waterloo. Bülow's men were followed to Waterloo first by I Corps and then by 6 Corps. Napoleon drafts General Order. At 11, Sir Napoleon drafted his General Order. Reille's corps on the left and d'Erlon's corps to the right were to attack the village of Mont-Saint-Jean and keep abreast of one another. This order assumed Wellington's battle line was in the village, rather than at the more forward position on the ridge. To enable this, Jerome's division would make an initial attack on Hougoumont, which Napoleon expected would draw in Wellington's reserves, since its loss would threaten his communications with the sea. A grande battery of the reserve artillery of I, the 2, and 6 Corps was to then bombard the center of Wellington's position from about 13 Neu. d'Erlon's corps would then attack Wellington's left, break through, and roll up his line from east to west. In his memoirs, Napoleon wrote that his intention was to separate Wellington's army from the Prussians and drive it back towards the sea. Attack on Hougoumont begins. Historian Andrew Roberts notes that it is a curious fact about the Battle of Waterloo that no one is absolutely certain when it actually began. Wellington recorded in his dispatches that, at about 10 o'clock, Napoleon commenced a furious attack upon our post at Hougoumont. Other sources state that the attack began around 11:30. The house and its immediate environs were defended by 4 light companies of guards, and the wood and park by Hanoverian Jaeger, and the 102nd Nassau. The initial attack by Baudouin's brigade emptied the wood and park, but was driven back by heavy British artillery fire and cost Baudouin his life. As the British guns were distracted by a duel with French artillery, a second attack by Soye's brigade, and what had been Baudouin's, succeeded in reaching the north gate of the house. Sous-Lieutenant Legros, a French officer, broke the gate open with an axe, and some French troops managed to enter the courtyard. The Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards arrived to support the defense. There was a fierce melee, and the British managed to close the gate on the French troops streaming in. The Frenchmen trapped in the courtyard were all killed. Only a young drummer boy was spared. Surf fighting continued around Hougoumont all afternoon. Its surroundings were heavily invested by French light infantry, and coordinated attacks were made against the troops behind Hougoumont. Wellington's army defended the house and the hollow way running north from it. In the afternoon, Napoleon personally ordered the house to be shelled to set it on fire, resulting in the destruction of all but the chapel. Duplat's brigade of the King's German Legion was brought forward to defend the hollow way, which they had to do without senior officers. Eventually, they were relieved by the 71st Highlanders, a British infantry regiment. Adams' brigade was further reinforced by Hugh Halkett's 3rd Hanoverian Brigade and successfully repulsed further infantry and cavalry attacks sent by Reille. Hougoumont held out until the end of the battle. First French infantry attack. A little after 13, I Corps' attack began in large columns. Bernard Cornwell writes, "Column suggests an elongated formation with its narrow end aimed like a spear at the enemy line, while in truth, it was much more like a brick advancing sideways, and d'Erlon's assault was made up of 4 such bricks, each one a division of French infantry. Each division, with one exception, was drawn up in huge masses, consisting of the 8 or 9 battalions, of which they were formed, deployed, and placed in a column, one behind the other, with only 5 paces interval between the battalions. The divisions were to advance in echelon from the left at a distance of 400 paces apart. The 2nd Division, Donzelot's, on the right of Bourgeois' brigade, the 3rd Division, Marconnet's next, and the 4th Division, Durotet's, on the right. They were led by Ney to the assault, each column having a front of about 160 to 200 files. The leftmost division advanced on the walled farmhouse compound La Haye Sainte. The farmhouse was defended by the King's German Legion. While one French battalion engaged the defenders from the front, the following battalions fanned out to either side and, with the support of several squadrons of cuirassiers, succeeded in isolating the farmhouse. The King's German Legion resolutely defended the farmhouse. Each time the French tried to scale the walls, the outnumbered Germans somehow held them off. The Prince of Orange saw that La Haye-Sainte had been cut off and tried to reinforce it by sending forward the Hanoverian Lüneburg battalion in line. Cuirassiers concealed in a fold in the ground caught and destroyed it in minutes, and then rode on past La Haye-Sainte almost to the crest of the ridge, where they covered themselves with glory by defeating 2 British squares. The columns of Derlyn's left and center-left divisions veered off slightly to the left and proceeded to attack the Dutch brigade that was stationed in front of the main Allied line. In the face of this onslaught, the outnumbered Dutch were forced to retreat in the direction of the main Allied position. This retreat exposed the flanks of the British and German brigades stationed at La Haye-Sainte. Derlyn's left and center-left divisions continued to advance until they came within range of the Allied position. At this point, they came under intense musket fire from the British infantry, which had been lying in wait behind the ridge. This musket fire, combined with the canister shot from the British artillery, inflicted heavy casualties on the advancing French columns. Despite the heavy fire, the French continued to advance, pushing the British and German brigades back towards the main Allied position. However, the French advance was brought to a halt when they encountered the British heavy cavalry, which had been positioned behind the ridge. The British cavalry, led by the Union Brigade, charged the French columns, breaking their formations and inflicting heavy casualties. The French were forced to retreat, leaving behind a large number of dead and wounded. Napoleon cites Prussians at La Belle Alliance. At approximately 1315, in response to a dispatch from Grouchy stating that he was engaging a Prussian force in the vicinity of Wavre, Napoleon commented that Grouchy must have attacked a single Prussian division and that Blücher's main army could not be in 2 places at once. At that moment, Napoleon and his staff spotted in the distance through their telescopes the Prussian 15th Brigade of Bülow's RV Corps, emerging from the Bois de Paris at Chapelle Saint-Lambert, around 4 kilometers, 2.5 miles away from the French position, which was a serious threat to their right flank. Napoleon's reaction was calm. Some historians argue that he was too calm, and it cost him the battle. He described the battle to Soult as, "The battle is completely won, but we are not yet done with it." Napoleon at once sent Lobau's corps to intercept this force. He also requested Grouchy to maneuver his corps to join the French army, immediately upon receipt of the dispatch. Lobau's corps moved quickly to block the Prussian advance. However, they were outnumbered and could only delay the Prussians. This delay allowed Napoleon to redirect part of his main army to face the Prussian threat. Cavalry attack on Allied center map of 18th of June. Battle by 15 The French cavalry corps, commanded by Marshal Ney, was stationed on the French left flank. Ney noticed a perceived retreat in the British center, and mistakenly thinking that the Allied line was about to collapse, ordered a mass cavalry charge without the support of infantry or artillery. Approximately 9,000 French cavalry, consisting of cuirassiers, carabiniers, lancers, and dragoons, surged forward. The Allies, having anticipated such a move, had prepared themselves accordingly. The British infantry formed themselves into squares, a highly effective defensive formation against cavalry. Each square consisted of a hollow rectangle of men, 4 ranks deep, with the front ranks kneeling with fixed bayonets, and the rear ranks standing and firing over their heads. As the French cavalry charged, they encountered a hail of musket fire and artillery shot from the Allied squares. Despite suffering heavy casualties, the French cavalry continued their assaults. The squares held firm, and the French cavalry were unable to break through. Ney, undeterred, ordered repeated charges, hoping to find a weak point in the Allied line. These charges continued for over 2 hours, but with little effect. Each charge was met with steadfast resistance from the Allied infantry and artillery. La Haye-Sainte falls. By late afternoon, the French finally succeeded in capturing La Haye-Sainte, a key position in the Allied center. This success came after repeated and determined attacks throughout the day. With La Haye-Sainte in their hands, the French artillery moved forward and began to pour enfilading fire into the Allied squares. This intense bombardment caused significant casualties and disorder within the Allied ranks. Napoleon saw an opportunity and prepared for a final assault to break Wellington's line. Arrival of the Prussians. Meanwhile, the Prussian IV Corps, under General Bülow, had been steadily advancing from the east. Despite facing fierce resistance from Lobau's corps, the Prussians pressed on and began to threaten the French right flank. The arrival of the Prussians was a turning point in the battle. The Prussian Third Corps and II Corps soon followed Bülow's lead, further strengthening the Allied forces. Napoleon attempted to counter this new threat by dispatching the Young Guard and elements of the Old Guard to support Lobau. However, the Prussians, determined and numerically superior, continued to advance, gradually pushing the French back. Imperial Guard's last stand. As the Prussians closed in from the east, Wellington saw an opportunity to press his advantage. At around 1930, he ordered a general advance of his entire line. The Allied troops, encouraged by the sight of the advancing Prussians, surged forward. In a final desperate attempt to turn the tide, Napoleon committed his elite Imperial Guard to a last assault. The Imperial Guard, veterans of many battles and known for their fierce loyalty and bravery, formed up in columns and marched towards the Allied center. The Guard's advance was initially successful, driving back the Allied skirmishers. However, as they approached the ridge, they encountered heavy fire from the Allied infantry and artillery. The British Guards division, concealed behind the ridge, unleashed a devastating volley at close range. The Imperial Guard, shocked and suffering heavy casualties, faltered. At this critical moment, the British and Allied troops charged the wavering French columns. The Imperial Guard, despite their reputation, could not withstand the onslaught. They were forced to retreat, and panic spread through the French ranks. French retreat and Allied victory. With the Imperial Guard in retreat and the Prussians advancing relentlessly, the French army began to disintegrate. Napoleon, realizing the battle was lost, attempted to rally his troops, but to no avail. The French retreat turned into a rout, with soldiers abandoning their positions and fleeing the battlefield. The Allies, both British and Prussian, pursued the fleeing French, inflicting further casualties. By nightfall, the battle was over. The French army was shattered, and Napoleon's hopes of regaining power were dashed. Wellington and Blücher met at the Inn of La Belle Alliance, symbolizing the joint victory of the British and Prussian forces. The Battle of Waterloo had ended in a decisive defeat for Napoleon, marking the end of the Napoleonic Wars and the beginning of a new era in European history. Aftermath and legacy. The Battle of Waterloo had far-reaching consequences. Napoleon abdicated for the second time on 22 June 1815 and was exiled to the island of St. Helena, where he remained until his death in 1821. The battle effectively ended French dominance in Europe and marked the beginning of a period of relative peace known as the Concert of Europe. The battlefield itself became a site of pilgrimage for veterans and a place of interest for tourists. Monuments and memorials were erected to commemorate the fallen soldiers of all nations involved. The Lion's Mound, a large artificial hill, was constructed at the battlefield, providing a panoramic view of the area where the decisive battle took place. The legacy of Waterloo extended beyond the immediate political and military consequences. It became a symbol of the end of an era, representing the defeat of Napoleon and the collapse of his empire. The battle has been immortalized in literature, art, and popular culture, serving as a source of inspiration and reflection on the themes of courage, leadership, and the futility of war. Waterloo also had a profound impact on military tactics and strategy. The battle highlighted the importance of coordination, communication, and the effective use of combined arms. The successful defense of Wellington's squares against cavalry charges demonstrated the resilience of well-disciplined infantry formations. The timely arrival of the Prussians underscored the significance of strategic alliances and the ability to reinforce and support Allied forces. In conclusion, the Battle of Waterloo was a pivotal event in European history, bringing an end to the Napoleonic Wars and reshaping the political landscape of the continent. It was a battle marked by bravery, strategy, and significant loss, and its legacy continues to be remembered and studied to this day.